Good morning. Chairman Peters, Chairman Durbin, Ranking Member Paul, Ranking Member Graham, and distinguished members of the committees. Thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today. A critical part of the Secret Service mission is protecting our nation's current and former government leaders. The attempted assassination of former President Donald J. Trump on Saturday, July 13th, 2024, in Butler, Pennsylvania, was a failure on multiple levels. I join you and all Americans in condemning the horrific assault on former President Trump, Corey Comparator, James Copenhaver, and David Dutch. And I extend my deepest sympathies to the Comparator family and my sincere wishes for Mr. Copenhaver and Mr. Dutch's continued recovery. Before I begin, though, I want to commend the heroic actions of the men and women of the United States Secret Service on July 13th. Our special agents shielded the former president with their bodies while shots were still being fired, selflessly, willing to make the ultimate sacrifice without hesitation. I am extremely proud of these actions and those taken by the counter-sniper team to neutralize the threat that prevented further loss of life. And I applaud the actions of our tactical teams that responded so quickly. I would also like to express my gratitude to our federal, state, and local partners. We rely on these critical relationships, which have developed over decades of daily collaboration to secure protective events and conduct criminal investigations. As you're aware, there are multiple ongoing investigations of the attack and the security failures that occurred that day. I pledge my full support to those inquiries so the Secret Service, your committees, and the American people have a thorough and complete understanding of what happened leading up to and during July 13th. I will not wait for the results of those findings to assess where we failed that day. I have taken and will continue to take immediate steps to ensure we do not repeat those failures. Since my appointment as the acting director 1 week ago, I identified gaps in our security on July 13th and have implemented corrective actions. One of my first actions as acting director was traveling to the Butler Farm Show site to better understand how our protection failed. I went to the roof of the AGR building where the assailant fired shots, and I laid in a prone position to evaluate his line of sight. What I saw made me ashamed. As a career law enforcement officer and a 25-year veteran with the Secret Service, I cannot defend why that roof was not better secured. To prevent similar lapses from occurring in the future, I directed our personnel to ensure every event site security plan is thoroughly vetted by multiple experienced supervisors before it is implemented. It is clear to me that other protective enhancements could have strengthened our security at the Butler event. As such, I have directed the expanded use of unmanned aerial systems at protective sites to help detect threats on roofs and other elevated threats. I've also directed resources to facilitate our protective site communications, particularly our communications with our state and local partners. In addition, I have instructed the asset request for Secret Service protective details to be approved expeditiously and have ordered the maximum use of requested personnel at protective sites to address this heightened security environment. I've heard your calls for accountability, and I take them very seriously. And given the magnitude of this failure, the Secret Service's Office of Professional Responsibility is reviewing the actions and decision-making of Secret Service personnel in the lead-up to and on the day of the attack. If this investigation reveals that Secret Service employees violated agency protocols, those employees will be held accountable to our disciplinary process. With respect to congressional investigations and requests for information, I instructed my staff to provide full cooperation and respond expeditiously on a continuing basis to ensure you have the information you need to conduct your critical oversight. In my testimony before you today, I will provide details on the Secret Service's advanced security planning for the Butler Farm Show site, facts as we know them regarding the incident itself, known breakdowns in executing the security plan, and corrective actions that the agency is taking to ensure that nothing like this happens again. But I do not believe that inadequate time to plan for this event was a factor in the failure. As you saw in my written statement, I am prepared to provide an overview of the security planning leading up to and during the July 13th attack. However, I would like to point out that based on what I know right now, neither the Secret Service counter-sniper teams nor members of the former president's security detail had any knowledge that there was a man on the roof of the AGR building with a firearm. It is my understanding those personnel were not aware the assailant had a firearm until they heard gunshots. Prior to that, they were operating with the knowledge that local law enforcement was working an issue of a suspicious individual prior to the shots being fired. I regret that information was not passed to Congress and the public sooner with greater frequency. And I fear this lack of information has given rise to multiple false and dangerous conspiracy theories about what took place that day. And I want to debunk these theories. Let me address one conspiracy directly. The Secret Service counter-sniper neutralized the assailant within seconds after the assailant fired his weapon. That counter-sniper had full discretion to use deadly force to stop an attacker and did not need to seek authorization to fire. I am immensely proud of the selfless dedication of our employees to the mission. Every day, across the globe, the men and women answer the call to protect our nation's leaders, and the standard is no fail for a reason. During our current high operational tempo, I want and I need to ensure that the Secret Service workforce are uplifted so they can focus on carrying out the mission. They have my full support, and I'm confident in their abilities to ensure the safety and security of the people we protect. They are worthy of trust and confidence, and they deserve your support as well as the support of the American people. Chairman Peters, Chairman Durbin, Ranking Member Paul, Ranking Member Graham, and members of the committees, thank you for the opportunity to testify at this joint hearing. I will submit the remainder of my statement for the record, and I will answer your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Rowe. Our second witness is Paul Abbate. Mr. Abbate is the Deputy Director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation at the Department of Justice. In this role, Deputy Director Abbate oversees all FBI domestic and international investigative and intelligence activities. Prior to his appointment as Deputy Director, he has had a distinguished 3 decades within the FBI leading counterterrorism efforts, and most recently as the Associate Deputy Director of the FBI, where he's responsible for the management of all FBI personnel, budget, administration, as well as infrastructure. Mr. Abbate, thank you for appearing before the committee here today. You are recognized for your opening remarks.
Thank you, sir. Good morning, Chairman Peters and Durbin, Ranking Members Paul and Graham, and distinguished members of the committee. It is a privilege to appear before you today to discuss the FBI's investigation of the attempted assassination of former President Trump on July 13th in Butler, Pennsylvania. Before going further, I want to again offer my and our condolences to the victims of this heinous attack, to the family and loved ones of heroic firefighter and father Corey Comparator, to Mr. Dutch, to Mr. Koppenhaver, who continue to recover, and to former President Trump, who was also struck by a bullet fired from the shooter's rifle. Our thoughts and prayers are with each of them and their families and loved ones. Within minutes of the attack, the FBI field office in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, received notification of the assassination attempt and responded to the scene immediately with a surge of resources, quickly moving forward on the investigation. From the outset, the FBI has been investigating this attack as an assassination attempt and an act of domestic terrorism. Our team continues to conduct a full, thorough, and objective investigation and will continue to follow all leads and avenues of investigation to logical conclusion, leaving no stone unturned. While it's not typical to provide details of an ongoing investigation, this, as we all know, is an extraordinarily tragic set of circumstances of the utmost national importance, making it essential to inform the American public and Congress what is known right now with full transparency. The investigation remains focused, of course, on determining motive, identifying any potential co-conspirators or others with knowledge of the attack, and building out a timeline of shooter Thomas Crooks' actions in advance of and during the attack. Thus far, though absolutely nothing has been ruled out, the investigation has not identified a motive, nor any co-conspirators or others with advanced knowledge. To date, the FBI team has conducted more than 460 interviews, executed search warrants, including at the shooter's residence, and seized electronic media to include phones, laptops, hard drives, and thumb drives. Legal process has been issued to dozens of companies, and we've received more than 2,000 tips from the public. The full resources of the FBI have been brought to bear in furtherance of the investigation. Agents, analysts, professional staff, experts. I've personally visited the site of this horrific attack and seen firsthand the work of FBI Pittsburgh and our partners on the front line, and want to thank all involved for their ongoing and tireless efforts to get the answers that we need and to deliver justice. Specialized resources deployed included evidence response teams, victim services specialists, laboratory and operational technology division resources to process physical and digital evidence, a shooting reconstruction team. Additionally, our explosive experts have analyzed the 3 IEDs recovered, 2 from the shooter's vehicle, 1 from the family residence. And our behavioral analysis unit, importantly, is helping to build a profile of the shooter to include his mental state. Next, I want to provide a brief highlighted overview of the timeline that has been established to date through witness interviews and other information. Again, this is our understanding at present and is subject to change and further refinement as more facts are collected. On July 3rd, the rally in Butler, Pennsylvania was announced. On July 6th, the shooter registered to attend the rally and performed a search for, quote, how far was Oswald from Kennedy? On July 7th, the shooter traveled from his home to the Butler Farm Show grounds and remained there for approximately 20 minutes. We assess this shows advanced planning and reconnaissance on his part. On July 12th, the shooter traveled from his home to the Clairton Sportsman Club, where he practiced shooting. On the morning of July 13th, at approximately 10 a.m., the shooter returned to the Farm Show grounds and remained there for about 70 minutes before returning home again. At approximately 1:30 p.m., while at the residence, the shooter's father gave him a rifle for the purpose, he believed, of going back to the Sportsman Club. About 25 minutes later, the shooter purchased ammunition while en route to the Butler Farm Show grounds. The subject then arrived at the scene and was moving around the Farm Show grounds close to the American Glass Research AGR building, from which he ultimately committed the attack. Shortly thereafter, at approximately 3:51 p.m., the shooter flew a drone approximately 200 yards from the Farm Show grounds for about 11 minutes. The drone and controller were later found in the subject's car. Analysis has not revealed any photos or video taken by the drone, but we can confirm that he was live streaming at the time and would have been able to view it on his controller. The first reported sighting of the shooter by local law enforcement was at approximately 4:26 p.m. At approximately 5:10 p.m., the shooter was again identified by local law enforcement as a suspicious person around the AGR building. And at approximately 5:14 p.m., a local SWAT operator took a photo of the shooter. At about 5:32 p.m., local SWAT observed the shooter next to the AGR building using his phone, browsing news sites, and with a rangefinder. At approximately 5:38 p.m., the photo of the shooter taken earlier was sent to local SWAT operators in a text message group. Subsequently, approximately 25 minutes prior to the shooting, the U.S. Secret Service command post was notified of a suspicious person. Officers lost sight of the subject from approximately 6:02 p.m. to 6:08 p.m., but continued to communicate with each other in an attempt to locate him. Recently discovered video from a local business shows the shooter pulling himself up onto the AGR building rooftop at approximately 6:06 p.m. And at approximately 6:08 p.m., the subject was observed on the roof by local law enforcement. At approximately 6:11 p.m., a local police officer was lifted to the roof by another officer, saw the shooter, and radioed that he was armed with, quote, a long gun. Within approximately the next 30 seconds, the shots were fired. The evidence recovery team found 8 shell casings at the scene next to the shooter's body. We believe that the shooter, fired 8 rounds. While the investigation has not determined motive, the investigative team continues to review information from legal returns, including online and social media accounts. Something just very recently uncovered that I want to share is a social media account which is believed to be associated with the shooter in about the 2019-2020 timeframe. There were over 700 comments posted from this account. Some of these comments, if ultimately attributable to the shooter, appear to reflect anti-Semitic and anti-immigration themes, to espouse political violence, and are described as extreme in nature. While the investigative team is still working to verify this account to determine if it did in fact belong to the shooter, we believe it important to share and note it today, particularly given the general absence of other information to date from social media and other sources of information that reflect on the shooter's potential motive and mindset. These are the facts, in part, that the investigation has revealed to date. While the shooter is dead, our work is very much ongoing and urgent. Thank you, and I look forward to answering any and all questions.